to move on to absolute deviation. Now, absolute deviation is just like the margin of error in science, which I don't know if you guys know what the margin of error is or not. But the margin of error basically is you have a set value, right? And you're willing to go over by a certain amount, and you're willing to go under by a certain amount. So, in this situation, you are buying a new computer. The table shows the prices of computers in a store advertisement. You are willing to pay the mean price with an absolute deviation of at most $100. How many of the computer prices meet your condition? Okay, so the absolute deviation equation should be on your notes up top, but if it's not, the absolute deviation equation is x minus the given value that's it. There's only two things. It's x minus a given value. So in this situation, we are given absolute deviation, which is 100. And we're given our given value, which is our mean. Do we know what our mean is? No, we have to find it. How do we find mean? It's the average. We need to add all of these together and divide it by the total. Go ahead and do that real quick. Okay. If you did not get the mean yet, go ahead and pause the video. Try to make sure you get to the mean. But our mean is going to be 664. Okay, so we know that our mean is 664, and we are willing to pay the mean price of 664. But we have that absolute value, or absolute deviation of at most $100. So what we are saying is we want to buy the average computer, right? Paying the average price. Basically what we said is we don't want to buy one of these $370 computers because maybe they're cheaply made or they don't have all the things that we want on it, right? But we also don't want to pay the highest price, which is $890, because sometimes when it's a certain brand name, it's priced a little bit higher, right? We want to buy a computer that's right in the middle. Now, the absolute deviation tells us we're willing to pay $100 less than $664. That might be a case where a cheaper computer might have the same items on it that you want as a $664 computer. But you're also willing to pay $100 more than $664 because maybe if you pay $100 more, you get a couple more things that you want, and that's still in your price range. So we have to write our absolute value equation to figure out what our price range is. So again, absolute deviation is x minus a given value, so let's go ahead and write that. X minus, and our given value is the mean. That's what we're willing to give, right? So 664. So that is our absolute value, right? Now we have to figure out our inequality symbol. At most, $100. At most tells us our mean is less than or equal to, because the most we can give is $100 more or less. So we need to put our $100 here because that's our absolute deviation. So based on that equation, our absolute deviation is here and our given value is here. That's all you have to know. Now we just solve it. We need to figure out, does this symbol make it an and or an or? Well, since our absolute value is less, that means it's an and. So since it's an and, we don't have to write two different equations if we don't want to. You can. If you want to write two different equations like we just did, you totally can, but you're going to have to put it together in a compound inequality at the end. If it's an and, we can actually solve them both at the exact same time. So let's put our absolute value in the middle. We have x minus 664. We're going to copy our equation. Now, all we have to do is take this sign and put it right here, the exact same way. See how these two signs are the same? Now, we have to change our 100 to its opposite, which is a negative 100. Now, in this situation, we can solve for both negative 100 and 100. And all we have to do is get x by itself in the middle by adding 664 to everything. Okay, when you add everything together, your final answer should be negative 100 plus 664 is going to be 564, which is less than or equal to x, which is already by itself, right? Which is also less than or equal to 100 plus 664 is 764. So this is our final answer. And this tells us the most we are willing to pay is $764, right? The least we are willing to pay is $564. So we need to answer our final question now. The final question is, how many of the computer prices meet your condition? Well, let's look at all 10 of the computer prices. The best thing that I would do to kind of differentiate between is we know the least amount we're willing to pay is $564. So we're for sure paying $564 or more, right? So let's go ahead and cross off the ones that are less than $564. I see $370. I also see $450. So we know we're not buying those two computers, right? Now, let's look at the most we are willing to pay is $764. So now let's cross off the ones that are more than $764. So I see $890. I also see $825. I don't see any others that we're willing to not pay for. So $650, $660, $625, or $725, $750, $670, and $650. That is 6 computers. We're answering the question, how many computer prices meet your condition? Well, you know 6 of them do, so 6 computers. I know we just covered a lot. If you have to pause it to copy these down on your notes, go ahead and do so. If not, if you guys all understand it, we're going to go ahead and move on. Okay, so this next one is a monitoring progress. That means it's time for you to work on it on your own. Go ahead and pause the video, get through it, and then play, and then you can check your answer and compare it to mine. The good thing about this one is we know absolute deviation in the equation is x minus a given value. Every time, right? So we have 2 numbers here. We don't have to find our given value because our given value is already handed to us, right? All we have to do is just differentiate. We know we're not putting the absolute deviation here, so let's find what the absolute deviation is. So the rules for an essay contest say that entries can have 500 words with an absolute deviation of at most 30 words. So we know 30 is our absolute deviation, so that means we're going to turn right around and make 500 our given value. So 500 words is our given value. So let's go ahead and make it that way. We have x minus our given value, which is 500 words. Now, this says right here, at most. That means what we are given is at most 30 words. So that means it's less than or equal to 30 words, just like it was last time. That means it can be 30 words, but it can also be less, right? But the highest it can go is 30. That's what at most means, right? If I were to pay at most $100, that means the most I will pay is $100, right? So now we're going to solve this the exact same way that we just did. We know that this tells us is an and compound inequality, which means we can solve them both at the exact same time. So let's put our absolute value in the middle, x minus 500. Let's copy down what this says, it's less than or equal to 30. Let's copy and paste our sign. We copy it, we paste it here. And 30, what's the opposite of a positive 30? It's a negative 30. Okay? Now to solve it, we have to get x by itself in the middle. We add our 500. Which cancels out that 500, right? So our final answer, after adding the 500, is going to be negative 30 plus 500 is 470. Which is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 500 plus 30 is 530. So this tells us right here that your essay has to be in between 470 words and 530 words, or the least amount of words you can write is 470, the maximum amount of words you can write